Alright, you guys, this has a bit of spoilers later on in the video. Not really pertaining to Fairy Tail, but really more about Bleach. So, just let you know now, let's go. So, I want to talk about Fairy Tail again. And more on the lines, not so much the entirety of Fairy Tail, more like the War Arc section. And, Fairy Tail is already anime and manga that isn't really well praised, mainly because everyone just always says, "Oh, it's just the power of friendship," and blah blah blah. And I honestly can't really deny that the Fairy Tail War Arc, even though it is a fantastic arc, at least to a certain extent, not the best war arc, but still not too shabby. It could be better. I definitely, because of that, still want to kind of talk about one way, or at least one section, I should say, of the war that could be fixed to benefit the same way how I feel about everyone else. And that's why today I want to talk about War Arc Natsu. Now, like I said, the problem with War Arc Natsu is the same thing as always. He manages to win, usually by some unbelievable way. Granted, like I said, the power scale wasn't too janked up, but it definitely still could be improved to at least make more sense. And I want to talk about this mainly because I feel like the best way to fix that is by giving Natsu a new form. Now, like I said, this is just me and my ideas and how I think Natsu in the war could be a little bit, could be a bit new and improved. And so I wanted to kind of talk about why he should get a new form, and that way I feel like it would fix at least this one section of the anime. Now, before I can really get into that, though, I feel like I have to let you guys know. Like I said, I took this inspiration after constantly going back and rereading Fairy Tail and rereading Bleach again, and I kind of understand, literally, Bleach is actually the best way that Fairy Tail should have kind of took inspiration from during the Thousand Year Blood War. Now, during the Thousand Year Blood War, Ichigo, like I said, he was an extremely powerful character who went through a lot of hardship and all this other stuff, but it's also because of the Thousand Year Blood War why we get to understand why Ichigo is the way he is and all this other stuff. And this is why I think that, like I said, this will be extremely beneficial, because early in the war we find out about Ichigo's origin, and literally I'm going to explain exactly how it kind of pertains exactly to Natsu's situation. So to do that, like I said, this is where the spoiler part come in, so click away if you don't want to hear it. But when Ichigo finally comes into contact with Yuak after being contained within Quilgi's jail, Yuak, he explicitly says, like, yeah, you were exposed to Quincy powers by constantly releasing yours all at once, and then it awakened your Quincy blood. And he even tells him, Quilgi's jail is meant to capture enemies, not Quincy's. And he looks at Ichigo because he seems confused, and he says, Ichigo, like, you don't even know about your own mother. You have no idea about your actual past. And that's when we get everything but the rain. And during this backstory, we found out a lot, and we find out how Ishin and Ichigo's mother, Kurosaki, come together. And this is when we find out Ichigo's mother was a pretty powerful Quincy. And of course, we already knew earlier that Ishin was a powerful Shinigami. Well, we actually find out that he's a royal, and he was the previous captain of Squad 10. And thanks to everything but the rain, we find out that Ichigo essentially has both Shinigami and Quincy powers within him. And on top of that, thanks to the fight that caused Ishin to lose his powers when he fought against the hollow known as White, which is the hollow that dwells inside Ichigo, it invaded Ichigo's mother. And when she gave birth to Ichigo, the hollow kind of transferred itself from her to Ichigo. And as it dwells in Ichigo for all those years, it constantly continued to evolve and develop itself into what we saw later on when it ended up fighting against Ukiura, and it was in this Vasolore form. One of the most badass forms of Ichigo. That shit was just fire. But seeing it transform into that, like I said, just the fact that we find out through all of this that, like I said, it causes Ichigo to have essentially be everything almost but human. And it ended up causing Ichigo to have both Shinigami, Quincy, and a hollow powers all at once. And that's why the Thousand Year Blood War Ichigo is the best fit for this, because it's very reminiscent of Natsu. Now, in this situation, like I said, through training and his recovery, he ends up gaining his true powers, where instead of relying on a false power that was Zangetsu, taking the form of you Bark and stuff, and basically being his Quincy side suppressing himself, more or less. He gains his true power, finds out the Hollow is his actual Asuchi, or his actual power. That's where real power comes in, and he gets a 1,000-year blood war form that we all know and love. And by doing constant training with the rest of the Zero Division, it eventually allows him to be able to tap into all of those powers all at once. And that's when we end up getting one of the best forms of Ichigo, and that's when he's actually able to use the power of White to its fullest extent on his own. He can use it and tap into it whenever he wants without going berserk, while also having like the Quincy blood dwelling within him, so he can use other stuff. Even though it wasn't shown too often, it is still kind of shown and stated that he can still use Quincy abilities, and the fact that he's also Shinigami, so he's able to use stuff like Shikai and Bankai, so on and so forth. Now, this is how it pertains to Ichigo, to Natsu. But before I really get into what I'm gonna do to fix that with Natsu, I have to explain that there are a few things that need to be taken out of the equation. A few things need to be changed. Number one being, you need to get rid of the writer should get rid of the whole if Natsu kills Zeref, he'll die too thing. Because I never really liked that idea, mainly because it's just simply, I created you, you have your own body, you're not powered by my magic in any form or fashion, but somehow, if I die, you die too. And I kind of don't really agree with that in any form or fashion, because it just doesn't make sense. Like I said, Natsu isn't relying on Zeref's power or anything, or anything of that sort, so it doesn't really make any sense why he should be, and not to mention, he even states that Natsu is a special demon. So number one, that needs to be taken out. Okay, just get rid of that completely. It just makes no sense. Number two is the main reason for why Natsu was stated to be quote unquote dying in the first place, and that is, instead of having the seeds fusing together, and that's what's causing Natsu to die, instead of that, have it where they're actually not fusing together and are actually battling inside of Natsu for this kind of, to be the top dog. They're fighting for supremacy to see which seed will actually take care of Natsu, will be like the main driving force of Natsu's power. Now, the third thing kind of segments into what the main point I'm trying to get into, and that is how the demon seed even comes about in the first place. Now, Natsu, as we know, is END. He's a demon, and by some stretch of magic, that also makes sure that he has demonic powers or demonic side altogether. And this is when the first fight of Zeref, and how I'm trying to explain why the parascaling can be a little bit better, and how to make everyone a little bit more comfortable. And that is by showing Natsu fighting Zeref. It can be done better by simply saying that Natsu is just not as powerful as Zeref in the first place. Natsu can fight Zeref, and he can even use his Blaze Dragon King mode, but the fight should act more as a catalyst to propel Natsu into this new transformation in the first place. By Natsu using his most powerfulest form at this point, Blaze Dragon King mode, he's able to fight against Zeref and even able to give him a few good blows, but he's still far beneath Zeref's overall power. And because of that, like I said, it leads to a bit of a struggle within Natsu. I mean, like I said, Natsu is trying his damnedest at this point. He's already tried to fight his armor, and his whole purpose of even mastering Blaze Dragon King mode and leaving the guild for a year was so he could reach this whole new level of power. But because he reached this whole new level of power and thinks that it's enough to destroy Zeref, you know what I'm saying, and finding out that Zeref still is just literally toying around with him, that's what causes the catalyst part, or the demon seed, to awaken in him in the first place. Because, demons have this overall aggression of wanting to kill Zeref. So the fact that he failed, and it's also his first true fight against him, and he lost, it caused the demon seed to erupt. And that's when, after he loses, Happy pulls him out, and you find out that Natsu's kind of dying from this tumor, as they quote it, because they don't know what it is yet, and neither will we as the reader, but still, it'll be a tumor. This is when the story kind of continues as it did same way in the manga, where the captured Brandish says, after speaking with Lucy and all this other stuff, says, yeah, okay, I can fix him, I can shrink his tumor, I know what I need to do, all I need is to find out exactly where it is at, and I'll fix it. Now, like I said, this will work in a simple sense of, like I said, it continues the same way of Brandish being able to be helpful, and yet again, shrink it, and also play a major role later on in the story on why Natsu becomes the way he does. So, with her shrinking the thing, like I said, it yet again reawakens Natsu, and everything seemed to go as normal until, as the fight is continuing with the Alvarez Empire, and the more battles Natsu partakes in, they start to notice that Lucy starts to notice that Natsu seems to be a bit colder, a bit darker. For starters, he seems to be a lot more violent than he normally would be, and he keeps asking every Spriggan that he comes across to, where is Zeref? Like, so he keeps asking. So it creates a little bit of foreshadowing of what the demon seed is, or what this quote-unquote tumor is at the moment. So it'll act as a bit of foreshadowing tool as things go on. And just like in the story, like I said, when the final fight, after he defeats the Spriggan that was enhanced by Irene, after he defeats him, Brandis, of course, does her usual thing. Notice that Demaria is following them, or has been following her, and tries to regrow it back to normal size. But of course, Demaria, not being fooled by this, knows that she could have killed Natsu if she really wanted to. The story continues the same way it did, and of course, she goes through, she guts Brandish, and she captures Natsu and Lucy. Now, the reason why this matters, like I said, because we've already got the foreshadowing at this point, that Natsu keeps asking where's Zeref, and because you already know that Zeref or demons have this overarching drive or sub-programming, it acts as a bit of foreshadowing. So then it makes a lot more sense when Natsu immediately, now that it's grown back to normal size, it takes over the dragon side. And that's when we end up getting Natsu back in his demon form, just like he did in the story. But now that it makes a bit more sense. Let's say he's a demon. Brandish, who had it suppressed, managed to, of course, lower the demon seed's overall potential. But now that it's going back to size, it's taking a more dominant force. So then, of course, he goes back to his usual thing, and he fights against Gray, just like in the original story. But, not really a but just yet, sorry. But as he continues to fight, of course, the same thing happens. Urza jumps in the way, and her blocking and talking to him kind of gives a brief moment for Natsu's normal side, or the normal Natsu that we know, to come back and kind of balance it out temporarily, which yet again puts him back in the comatose state like he was before. This is when not Ignil himself, but in the Fairy Heart situation in the first place, or the chapters Fairy Heart and Demon or Dragon, he reveals to him that no, they're fighting for supremacy, and because you need to choose which one you want to be. Do you want to take the demon side or become a dragon? You have to choose, otherwise, because they're not merging together, you will die. And this is how Natsu can overcome that. And just like in the story, he says, you know what I'm saying, like, why do I need to choose? You know what I'm saying? I am human. I am Natsu Dragneel. And this is where, like I said, he can actually get the chance to gain a new form, because this is where, instead of him saying, like, you know, I'll choose one side or the other, Natsu, being the way Natsu is, decides, like, no, you know what I'm saying? If they're not working together, you know what I'm saying? I will make the two seeds cooperate. And that's when you get a little image or something of him kind of grabbing both seeds and absorbing it within himself, or making them kind of fuse together in the first place, which of course, you know what I'm saying, causes Natsu to overcome that. The seeds are now fused together in a one, and then that's when we finally get Natsu actually waking up. Now, the cool thing about this is, like I said, once he wakes up, now this makes more sense why he can actually confuse there. Now he wakes up with the two seeds fused, and it's almost like his body went through a bit of a metamorphosis. Though he still looks the same, everyone immediately, just upon him waking up, realizes that his magic power is much, much greater than it was beforehand. And Natsu has essentially propelled himself into a whole new level. And this is what I mean when I say it changed him on like a metaphorical level, because now instead of him being at the same skill just with a new form, it kind of boosts everything up, as you know, at the same time he's a new Natsu essentially. This would of course make more sense and give him more reason for when he fights Zeref the second time. Even though beforehand Blaze Dragon King mode couldn't really beat him, he's able to fight Zeref one-on-one at this point and be actually even with a Zeref that's more trying. And even Zeref in this story, like I said, even in my version of this Natsu, would also be more powerful. And Zeref, of course, would notice it. He's like, you're more powerful than that Blaze Dragon King mode stuff that you shown earlier. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're more powerful than that. But even still, as I said before, Zeref was toying around with that form, which, like I said, would fit the power scaling. So you've ended up finding out, you know what I'm saying, that may be true. But of course, Natsu unveils the other form that everyone tends to forget he had, including the writer. And Natsu uses Lightning Flame Dragon mode. Now, if, like I said, his base form is already much stronger than Blaze Dragon King mode, but it's still not enough to make Zeref, still not enough to beat him. So, of course, by activating Lightning Flame Dragon mode, he gets that significant multiplier, you know you know what I'm saying, gets that boost in power, well, like I said, where even he was able to press Hades to move it to using his full power as well. So this kind of more or less evens the playing field between them. And now Lightning Flame Dragon Mode, Natsu, is able to compete with Zeref on that scale. In fact, like I said, in the story, he's actually starts to gain the upper hand close to the end of the battle. So that actually shows Lightning Flame Dragon Mode is stronger than the base Zeref. But then, of course, Zeref, who's been taking punishment, he realized that, it's finally complete. And that's when he's able to activate the Fairy Heart and the Eclipse. Sorry. The Neo Eclipse, sorry. The portal that had all of the time space magic in it. And go into his White Wizard Zeref form, which of course begins to body a Lightning Flame Dragon Mode Natsu, which makes sense. And it kind of shows, like I said, he's a lot more powerful. And so this is when the Bleach aspect comes into it, because now Natsu, being like Ichigo when he fought Ewok, is like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? He looks at Zeref and he's like, okay, I think I'm finally ready now, you know what I'm saying? I think I can finally use this power. And that's when he activates the overall effect of what it has, and that's when he gets this kind of ethereal dragon form. Now, like I said, after seeing, if you ever saw the Dragon Cry movie or just looking in the screen, looking on the screen right now, then you'll notice, like I said, Natsu kind of took this real dragon-like appearance, and I think it should keep that same thing, but instead add a little more features, like give him some horns or something, or he could be like Renakumura from Blue Exorcist when he goes a little bit demonic, he gets more like a blue flame horn thing instead of actual horns. While also giving him, because now, like I said, he kind of looks like a dragon, but give him a bit of a demonic twist, so he gets the horns. And instead of his wings being like dragon wings, they look more like someone like Mard Gears, and has more like a demonic, like bat-like wing rather than a dragon. So just, you know what I'm saying, just a little cosmetic design to kind of show that Natsu is stronger, or that is fused together with the dragon and demon side, so he looks more like a demonic dragon. Then, of course, that would make more sense in the power scaling to show that former Natsu being able to contend with White Wizard Zeref rather than a base form Natsu somehow still having enough force to deal with White Wizard Zeref, even though beforehand he was barely keeping up with a Black Wizard Zeref. So it would just make a lot more sense if you do it that way. So then, you know what I'm saying, so now you kind of deal with that power scaling aspect and trying to, you know what I'm saying, instead of it being like a power friendship, it makes sense why Natsu was actually strong enough to be able to take on White Wizard there. And of course, with that being said, also with, of course, the actual ending, where all 7 of the Dragon Slayers face off against Acnologia as well. Now, Natsu can still be injured and stuff, like he don't have to beat Zeref easily, but it's just the fact that now, like I said, he has the new form, and it would make more sense why he's able to then later on compete with a also much stronger Acnologia, when beforehand he could barely keep up with Zeref, who Zeref is weaker than Acnologia. So I think it just kind of fixed those problems just by giving him this form in this way. Now, I really hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, tell me how you all would kind of deal with Natsu and figure out how he would be done. If you want me to do like an actual new and improved and actually discuss how I would change the entire war arc itself, comment that down below. But in the meantime, you guys, like I said, I really hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, you guys, I will see you. Peace.